an issue now of out-of-court disposals. I'm delighted to be asked by judges and magistrates associations to talk to them. They've noticed a significant drop-off of, let's say, adults attending courts now. Let's put to one side young people for the moment. And they've asked me to seek assurance from you that that you are as assured as you reasonably can be that police officers are not using out-of-court disposals because they're under pressure or as an easy way out, to use rough parlance on that. So my question to you is, I'm sure you recognise the same as I do that there are less people going through the magistrates' courts. What I and the public need from you is an assurance, as best you can, and you may be checking this as far as I know, that your officers' use of out-of-court disposals is entirely appropriate.
Okay. There's very clear guidelines from their ACPO national guidelines. There are also force guidelines around the use of out-of-court disposals. And we've been very clear around those guidelines, and particularly where they hit the more contentious crime types, particularly sexual offences. Very clear guidelines. People are trained in the use of restorative justice and very clear at the contentious issues of the scrutiny and higher levels of decision making. We do scrutinise them. We certainly use them more and more, and I'll come back to that. But you and I discussed this concern from the criminal justice world, and we've both agreed to write together inviting external scrutiny under your leadership and your chairing, whereby we can dip sample and we can either alternatively look at key cases for learning. I would welcome that scrutiny. We already have our own scrutiny, partly to give reassurance, but partly so that my officers can learn and they can have a view of the independent magistrate that from their perspective seemed the right thing to do, or maybe it wasn't. What we've got to remember with restorative justice is, and I'm not having a dig at the criminal justice system here in the official side, is restorative justice is about the needs of the victim. And that has to balance with the needs of the victim and the needs of the public. And the needs of the victim need to be balanced up. And sometimes victims just want a simple apology. Sometimes the victim wants to be assured, the victim, that the crime won't happen again. And whether young or old, the evidence is pretty clear that often restorative justice outcomes taken early in an offender's life cycle stops that reoffending, is a better outcome for the victim, actually a better outcome for society because reoffending is less. And that's not just for young people. You know, the CSR, one way or another, is causing some people to engage in criminality they never would. I don't either condone nor condemn it. But if at the age of 30, 35 you're a first-time shoplifter or a second-time shoplifter, that entitlement for restorative justice should be no different to a young person. And I do feel sometimes some, not all, of the criminal justice system doesn't understand that there's a new world out there of community justice and where the needs of the victim, or we touched on earlier, are equal to, and perhaps even on occasion, outweigh what the criminal justice system would want. So scrutiny already exists, guidelines already exist, I'm up for greater scrutiny, but there needs to be a meeting here between what the community wants and what the victim wants and what the criminal justice system wants. And I'm not privy to all of that.
No. I think then you and I are committed to responding through the Devon and Cornwall Advisory Board I mentioned, and indeed to magistrates. I've taken an action to go back to them and give them such reassurance as we can over this issue. Yeah. Just to go back for a moment to mobile data, can you tell me whether we can expect police officers to be equipped with more modern mobile data in the short to medium term?
I'm very keen to do this. My staff are crying out for it and have been for some time, and we know that. To a degree, we kind of have mobile data. Our modern day radios can cover some mobile data, particularly text messaging and even some basic imagery. The mobile data that we would see day to day through handheld devices, like I mentioned iPad, but others, MacBooks, is still a little way off for us. One, because of our IT systems, but two, because of just the resilience of those bits of kit, because they're going to sit and be thrown around in the back of the car. This force didn't go with the first phase of the National Mobile Data rollout. If you recall, it's before your appointment, Commissioner, but a national review of that spoke about the amount of waste of forces buying kit that sat in lockers or failure to train people. Now, we haven't made those mistakes because we haven't bought the kit, so we can start with a head start. But the second piece is, I am wedded to it because with this geography, the biggest geographic area in England and the second biggest in England and Wales, officers taking reports from victim, which are statements that are videoed, which can be transcribed, inputting with the victim the statement, taking reports of property, and at the press of a button, that being recorded back at HQ, is absolute common sense 21st century policing. Our technology limits us on that, not our ambition. You said short to medium term. I would like to see a big step forward on that in less than 12 months. You've certainly, in increasing the preset, made that commitment to the public, that investment in technology, and I was very grateful for that. And I think it's not just our gratitude, the public should see a tangible return on that within 12 months. If you pushed me, I would say 9 months, but we're very dependent on that crime system coming in. That big crime system transition is scheduled for about April 2014. And that's the time when I think you'll see a real uplift in mobile data. What you have seen, just very briefly, are some pockets, particularly around using video cam on officers, and you'll see that in pockets around the force. There is in Falmouth, there's one.
Yes.
So some real opportunities for that as well, particularly for single patrol officers.
All right. Chief Constable, my final question really relates directly to the nuts and bolts of our performance board that we held last week. It's very good news that overall crime is falling at around 8.1%. There are stubborn areas in sexual offences and in violence against the person. Can you tell me and our listeners what actions you're going to take on those two counts?
The violence against the person is serious violence, homicide, actual bodily harm, GBH. It is falling, total violence not falling. Certainly at the top end, the life-changing injuries that we see, sadly, on our streets, very much not totally, predominantly linked to the nighttime economy. So you're seeing a lot of our officers now engaged in the nighttime economy, and we've spoken about this, Commissioner, about the needs to managing our licensing laws. And I have to say, in fairness to the licensing world, they are working with us almost universally across the peninsula. There's a couple of pockets. And certainly as summer policing comes on, there's some great summer policing plans around. You have to look at Newquay and Torbay and other parts of the force to try and reduce violence associated with the nighttime economy. And some of that is also about getting people away, so better cab ranks, having glass-free zones, working with street pastors. But ultimately, a lot of our nighttime violence is linked to people who drink to excess, cannot control themselves, and that means a lot closer work with local authorities around licensees, but also, we've said this before about drink safe and stay safe, about people you're out with looking after you, and that sort of takes me into the sexual offences piece. You should be able to, and are in the main, able to enjoy yourself in Devon and Cornwall, perhaps more than anywhere else. There is something about looking after each other when we're out and about. Another aspect of violence and sexual violence happens though within the home. And that, the only way I think to reach into that in a real way to reduce it is to firstly totally understand the problem and the extent. And I think you have been quite rare, if I can say, Commissioner, in actually stating explicitly, I want to understand the problem, I'm willing to see more reporting. None of us want more crime, but in terms of sexual offences, do we understand the scale of the problem? Most people will report a burglary, a theft of a vehicle, but as we've seen in Savile and in other cases, there is a lot of sexual offences that stay hidden for years. And it's that analytical work and getting the confidence of victims, getting our support mechanisms in place with victim care. When it's a recent event, our sexual offences referral centres in place, funded again through your commissioning work, in place to support victims. So in the violence piece, proactive work on our streets and working with our partners, same relevant to sexual offences, but in the public place, sexual offences are incredibly rare in Devon and Cornwall. It is usually, in these circumstances, victims are known to each other, takes you into that world of safeguarding, takes you into the world of understanding the problem, and the confidence of victims, old or young, historical, recent, to come forward and report and to bring offenders to justice is key for us and why we're here. The last piece for me is the innovation. We know we need to improve our third-party reporting. So there's an initiative that we're working through around third-party reporting, whereby you can report through an advocate your offences. And again, just lastly on that piece on victims, trying to work with the criminal justice system to try and reduce almost the fear of being a secondary victim in the criminal justice system when you stand up in court giving evidence against your perpetrator. So there's a piece there through the local criminal justice board about seeking to demystify and to improve conviction rates at court, because that's another thing that we're doing as well, Commissioner. It's a bit of a canter, but ultimately our ambition, your ambition, is this is the safest place in the United Kingdom. I have to say, and I'm not just saying it because we're being webcammed, this is still one of the safest places to live, but we can and will make it safer.
Thank you very much, Chief Constable.
Commissioner.